Casino employees of Reddit, what is the worst you have ever seen someone handle a loss? One guy was so angry at his losses that he took 200 quarters, cut them in half, taped one side, and proceeded to put them in various slot machines. Once they entered the machine, it would jam it up. Sounds like a lot of work when he could have just used washers or a cork gum or something. Was a waitress in casino establishment 10 years ago. Suicides were not common there, but they did happen. Saddest was an Asian woman who hung herself in the toilets. She lost 20k or so from memory and was not a high roller type. 3-4 days later her car was to be towed from the underground car park. Sadly she had left her 2 fluffy dogs in there and nobody knew. Poor things were dead. The establishment then put on parking patrol officers who check cars every few hours. They would find, alive, dogs and kids in there far too often. I quit after 6 months as was tired of watching miserable zombies. I once sat in the car for upwards of 10-12 hours or so while my dad gambled at the casino. Things were rough growing up and I often remember he and my mom getting into arguments over his gambling. The worst it got was when he gambled away rent money, already behind in the first place, and we got evicted. And no, that didn't stop his gambling, unfortunately. I for one can't stand to step foot in casinos. Worked as a security guard on night shift. The biggest losers are in a fantasy land where they don't even notice. Never actually saw addicts get worried about the future. That may be the saddest response so far. It's amazing that anyone could operate with that blasé an attitude toward money. Gambling addiction is a scary beast. I actually did work in a casino in Las Vegas a few years back. In VIP services. One of our high rollers, who visited frequently, had a very bad gambling problem that his wife was divorcing him over. He lost everything at the tables and couldn't even afford his plane ticket back home. He threatened go to the roof of the hotel and throw himself off. The casino felt so sorry for him. We ended up buying a ticket back home for him. Never heard from him again after that. Edit, yes it did actually happen. It was a brand new casino so I am sure they didn't want to risk just ignoring his threats. Also, no one made him gamble. Vegas was not built on winners. Probably less sorry and more no dead guy at casino and days old crime scene. Former table dealer here. I've had drunk guys tell me I'm the worst dealer ever. I suck. etc. I would just reply have a nice day. The other people at the table were generally on my side. I've higher rollers slam the table with their fist or not react at all to losing thousands. The worst and the saddest one that sticks in my mind is a guy who was around $2,000 down on blackjack. He was nice. He was tipping pretty well. I was rooting for him, as I tended to do. I knocked his 10s for good luck. Then he lost a big one and just yelled duck. So loud that the entire casino must have heard it. It was the kind of desperation in his voice and everything about him that told me he could not afford to lose as much as he just lost. He went to the ATM. And I rotated to another table. It was sheet like that. The goddamn smoke in my face. Sleep deprivation from the late nights that led me to get out of there. A lot of other unpleasant moments too. But they all blur together. Money was nice. But it wasn't for me. Just out of curiosity. Roughly how much do dealers make? 40-60k a year. Depends on full-time status first and foremost. Then most casinos split tokes for the table games dealers. Poker dealers usually keep their own tokes. But the shilling is much higher on what you can make. I've heard of a few making 100k a year, but that means working full 8-10 hour shifts 5 days a week and not leaving early, signing the EO. A gentleman at a poker table in the 5-seat unzipped his pants and urinated on the dealer. I never caught the signal the dealer used, but it was effective as all the guys who normally collect boxes from the tables show up out of nowhere and removed him from the table like they were taking out the trash. Well, they were. Table broke up so they could clean. Dealer showered and put on a new uniform and I saw her on the floor again a few hours later. What a duck-in professional. Not a casino employee. But just the other day my father-in-law, security, watched an elderly lady lose everything at a poker table. And then go around and steal a couple people's purses, wallets. When they confronted her and asked for ID, she wouldn't give it to them because they weren't the police. When the police arrived, she still wouldn't give them her ID or even her name, saying they couldn't arrest her if they didn't know who she was. Needless to say, they arrested her anyways. The last thing the cop asked her was, "Are you at least going to cooperate and walk out with us to the car? Or are you going to do it the hard way?" They had to carry her out and she was kicking the windows in the back of the car the entire time. Edit, she was 63. Shall I show you to your room? Or would you prefer to be dragged off kicking and screaming? Kicking and screaming. Please. Well, we had a guy jump from his suite on the 18th floor. Still have divots in the pavement where his leg bones drove into the asphalt. Edited for the morbidly curious. Divot. I sat next to a guy. He drove a Pepsi truck. He said his mom died and left him $30,000. He'd never seen this much money before, so he thought he could turn it into $100,000. We're at the blackjack table. He's getting wasted and crying inconsistently BC of his mom, talking about her dying. The cocktail waitresses are cock teasing him the whole night and he tips them $25 every drink. In 2 hours he loses everything. He has this look of nervousness on his face and said his wife is going to kill him if she finds out about this. BC, they have 4 kids and wanted to buy a house. He walked out. 10 minutes later I go to my car and see that he got a DUI. In 24 hours. His mom died. He gets a ton of money. Loses it all. Will probably get divorced. Gets a DUI. And is sitting in the back of a cop car with blue gonads from the cocktail waitresses. Edit, I don't know if his mom died the same day he got the money. I didn't ask him about that. This was like 15 years ago. Some people aren't too smart. He probably heard of the FedEx executive who turned 30k into 100k in a weekend to keep the company afloat. I was a security guard at a Native American casino for just under 2 years. I worked the graveyard shift the entire time before I had to leave for my own mental health due to how depressing this job could be. A few of the things I saw just in the category of losses, not violence, abuse, drugs, and prostitution, all depressing in their own way, were as follows. Elderly people who would spend their entire social security checks in one night and be forced to use food banks for the remainder of the month. Many couples getting into fights, sometimes physical, over the other giving them bad luck. Anyone who would win a lot in the first 20 minutes they were there, then chasing losses after they gave it back to the house, often emptying their entire savings accounts. Lots every month, losing their entire paycheck. Then savings. Then taking out cash advances, that of course could be done in-house, attempting to win back their lost paycheck. The worst one I ever saw was a known local business owner losing what he called over half my life's savings in under 8 hours at $2,000 a hand on a blackjack table, then attempting to strangle the dealer. I had to tackle him and put him in handcuffs. He left the property in a sheriff's car and attempted to enter the building 3 times in the next 2 weeks with intent to kill the H. Moral of the story: don't gamble, and if you must be very careful, gambling addiction is a serious issue. I have to agree about casino jobs being some of the most depressing. I watched my brother-in-law deteriorate from just a couple years of working at one as a dealer. He began spending loads of his paycheck gambling and getting drunk. So drunk once that he passed out and hit his head in the driveway and stayed there all night with his car door open. He got a DUI shortly after, and that really got him thinking about his life and job. He quit shortly after and got a new job at a bank and stopped drinking heavily. Moved on up through the ranks quickly there and his mood improved 200%. Found a sweet fiancée. Moved out of his mom's house. And now has a little boy and is getting married this weekend. I was security at a casino for a few years. Saddest story for me was this older gentleman, let's call him Tom for privacy's sake. Tom would frequent the casino every day, spending anywhere from $200 minus $300. I had striked up lots of conversations with him because he was a regular and he was genuinely kind person who I enjoyed seeing. One day Tom comes in and I can tell he is upset. I don't make anything of it. But after seeing the guy for a few years almost every day, that day he looked really off, so a couple hours go by and I track him down and ask how's the day going? Any big wins? Just general chit chat. He starts sobbing. Tears running down his face. His wife had passed away from sudden cardiac death is what I believe he called it. The night before. And he was devastated. We talked for quite a while. I tried comforting him while he played the machines. I had noticed he was betting extremely large. $200 minus $300 per spin on the slot machine. I knew that was a lot for him. But I didn't say anything because it's not my business and I was sure it's a coping mechanism for him at the moment. Doing something he loved when he just lost the love of his life. Hours later I see him heading out the door. I run up to him, catch him and wish him all the best and that I'll see him soon. He smiled, said thanks for the chat and thank you for the condolences and left. He booked a room in our hotel and healed himself that night. A little while later I find out through some other staff who were sort of friends of his family that he had spent all of his money, every dime that evening, spinning high limit on the machines. I'm assuming because he wanted a little enjoyment before he took his life. Still makes me upset I didn't invite him more over or do anything else because I knew he was in pain. I watched my uncle lose everything at a poker table. So he proceeded to the bathroom, came out with his pants off and throw them on the table and say pants please. The dealer said we can't take your pants sir. He said why not, you've took everything else? Needless to say he was escorted out of the casino very upset. Edit. Blackjack table not poker table. Worked in the cage before becoming a dealer. Saddest thing I used to commonly see is people getting cash advances of $15 and paying a $7.99 fee to do it. It was $7.99 to get up to $100. With $15 being the minimum. They would pay a 50% VAG to piddle away $15. I guess they thought that big jackpot was just around the corner. Sad. I work in IT. For a casino and just had to replace a phone that was ripped off the wall and thrown at one of our pit bosses over a bad loss. A guy drove off the parking deck to commit suicide at the casino I worked for. Dealer for 10 years. Third day dealing. Fresh out of dealer school I am dealing pari gao tiles. Asian domino game. Try to get pairs and tiles to add up as close to 9 as possible. On a $25 minimum game. Guy bets $25 minus $75 for a good 2 hours. He then slides his whole stack on one hand for 3k. For those who know the game. He gets Teen Daibo. I pull G June. For those who do not know the game. It's like he got pocket kings and I got pocket aces. Or he pulled a 20 in blackjack and I just pulled 11 cards to make 21. The odds are astronomical. It's the only hand that beats him. He slams his fist on the table swearing in Chinese. Chips fly everywhere. And begins to shove his finger down his throat. He self-induces vomit all over my game. Close the table and pit down for cleanup. Third day dealing. Money benefits are great though. Highly recommend the industry. Made 30-40 an hour. Not an employee, but my mum's friend won a slot machine jackpot. Security had to swoop in and save her because she was a very casual gambler and would use like 5 coins then leave. But that night on one of her first coins she won the jackpot. The people around her were gambling addicts and some of them had been working that machine 4 hours before and felt it should have been their win. So they tried to attack her for the money, but she did get it. This wouldn't have been a big win either because it was a small place, but scary stuff. Casino zombies are aggressive and territorial. They worked for that jackpot and some itch came and stole it. This lady with a serious gambling problem was asked to leave as she'd been in the building for over her limit. As a protest, she pissed her pants and dripped it into the machine she was at and refused to stand up or walk out. Had to be dragged with piss running down her legs, dripping onto the carpet, down an escalator and onto the street. I've posted about this before on a similar Askreddit. An older gentleman left the casino I was working at the time to go get the car while his wife went to the washroom. However, instead of getting the car, he doused himself in gasoline and lit himself on fire inside the car. Edit, link. This guy who lost $100 million then sued Caesars for allowing him to continue to gamble at its properties has to be up there. You know, if you had 100 million and just ducking loved gambling, you could blow 7-10k a night every night for the rest of your life and probably clear another 1-2 million a year in investment income. And losing a few grand is almost always enough to get all the cummed food, drinks, and rooms you'd like. You could live like a king, tossing chips to all the pretty girls, and secure in the knowledge that, as long as you stuck to your budget, it wouldn't hurt you in the long run. And you could do it as long as you liked. Yet this guy blows it all in a year. Never understood people like that. Obligatory not a casino employee. But, when I was in Vegas, I was watching a very intense game of blackjack on Fremont Street. The guy bet everything he had. Convinced, since he was on a winning streak, this would be the hand that doubled his winnings. Unchokingly, he busts. As soon as they swooped his chips away, he began slamming his hands on the table screaming, "What the duck? What the duck?" with his girlfriend, dressed in a cheesy tight mini dress and 7-inch heels, screaming at him and telling him that he promised her a Birkin purse with that money and crying. An unsuspecting guy accidentally bumped into this irate dude, and that just made him lose his sheet. A chair went flying. The guy he bumped into stepped up and starts asking him if he wants a piece of this. Shoves are exchanged, and the screaming starts just as a high heel is thrown straight past the sore loser's face and right into someone else's head. I wanted to stay and watch the throwdown, but my boyfriend yanked me away with a solid nope. Just as well, 2 furious looking Vegas PD officers were literally shoving their way through the crowd as we stepped away. Haven't been in the gaming biz since the 1990s. But I've seen everything from tantrums on the floor to attacks on workers. The worst one though was some moron right out of prison with his homies lost his money on the blackjack table. Took it personally. Went out to his car. Waited for the dealer to get off work. Followed him. And then beat the living shit out of him when he stopped for gas. Not an employee. But the first time I was ever in a casino I was skulking around the blackjack tables. I was baffled by the minimums. $500, $1,000, $5,000 a hand. Edit, someone has pointed out that I may have been looking at the maximums. It's hard to remember and my memory is probably skewed as it was my first time in a casino. Everything was baffling at the time, haha, I thought it was nuts. But this was a busy day and all of them were full. I sat behind the $5,000 min table and watched a guy lose hand after hand after hand. I always figured that when someone bets at these tables they have so much money that they can afford to throw it away like it was nothing. Not this guy. I don't know if this guy's just wanted to be a high roller for the day or what, but he was visually upset and very quickly bleeding into audibly upset. He lost his last hand, he ducking lost it. He yelled, "Where is that fugly itch? I want a Manhattan." Then proceeded to rant and rave until the pit boss came over and offered him something or other. He continued to be a giantess, and so 3 security guards came over and escorted him to the buffet. I like to imagine he tried to get his tens of thousands of dollars back in crab legs. My uncle worked at a casino for years. He had a lot of horror stories, but the worst by far was this guy who lost a large sum of money playing cards. The second he lost, he pulled a gun out and shot himself right there at the table. Not an employee, but my girlfriend and I were at a local casino for dinner on Saturday, so we decided to take a lap around the playing floor afterwards. We are walking by the blackjack tables and notice a small crowd around a guy who had a pile of chips in front of him. After it's clear he lost it all to the dealer, he starts screaming that he couldn't lose and begins to slam his head into the table. Ends up leaving in handcuffs. I used to be a casino host on cruise ships casinos. Seen many people lose their shit. But there is one woman that I'll never forget. She was gambling a lot. Towards the end of the cruise, I would find her on the slots. She was crying and playing. I asked her what's wrong, and she said, I cannot afford to play anymore. This is all on my credit card. Talking, playing, crying at the same time. I banned her from the casino, but it was already too late. I also heard stories from colleagues that used to work for a Russian cruise company that they always would keep one lifeboat half-lowered because Chinese people would jump overboard after losing all of their money. Work casino M's and security. Horsemen commit suicide. They are all alcoholics. So at least one drinks themselves to death every year. And they like to stab each other. Drove a car into the casino wall. Not the doors. The wall. The driver had a traumatic brain injury and luckily didn't injure anyone else. Left the casino. Got drunk high. Drove through someone's house and killed them. Suicide by shotgun in the parking lot. Punch a machine and break that giant touchscreen? Those are $5,000 to replace. That could make you a felon. People OD in the bathrooms. A lot. People get so desperate they will wander up and down the aisles looking for pennies left on the machines.